Haha, the classic old myth. I just order a popular and well-selling product from Alibaba with my logo on it, and from then on I'm finally financially independent. If you believe in that, just like you might still believe in Santa Claus, then stick around until the end, because this video is for you. My name is Jens Linden, and I've been in e-commerce for over 20 years. And I've seen more products come and go than your DHL drivers have. In this video, I'll show you a strategy in the private label sector that really works and doesn't implode after the third YouTube video. Let's say, just hypothetically, you want to start from scratch. In private label, meaning you want to have your own product line manufactured, ideally in Asia. Then in this video, I've brought you 5 points that you absolutely need to pay attention to. Otherwise, I guarantee you, if you skip even one of these points, your whole venture will go down the drain. Point number 1 is the product idea. From nice to in demand. Because if your strategy up to now has been to just scroll around on Alibaba and maybe also on Amazon until you see a product where you think, that looks cool, I want to do that, I'm going all in, then you have a pretty good guarantee that you'll fail completely with it. Because good ideas don't come from your gut, they come from numbers and hard data. The first thing you need is a problem that your customers want solved. So don't start with which product looks good or what you might personally like, but really what kind of problem do your customers have in your category? For example, cable clutter on the desk. That's basically what they're searching for too. How do I solve the problem of my unmanaged cable system, if you can even call it a system, on my desk? Once you have identified this problem for your category, then you look for a product that solves exactly this problem, and really only this problem. Yes, for example, a smart cable management solution, and not a cable management system that maybe also makes coffee. Nobody wants that. I just want this one specific problem to be solved. And if my product selection truly solves that and satisfies my exact need, then, and really only then, will you have truly satisfied customers. So what that means is do not just bring the 1,000th generic phone case to the market, but really think deeply about what your customers can actually use in their daily lives. And let me tell you one thing. Most problem-solving products are pretty unsexy. They don't have a sophisticated design. They don't have any super fancy features. They simply solve the problem. Keyword, cable management. The best and most sustainable way is to start with your customer's problem. So not with potential practical solutions or with elaborately designed products, but really, what specific problems does my customer want to be addressed and resolved? To know when they shop with me. And you can find that out relatively easily. For example, by looking directly on Amazon and checking, what problems do customers have in the area of cable management? What are the top sellers? And where do customers complain the most? And that's how you dive into the topic. And of course, you can see the complaints in the reviews on Amazon. But you can also use Answer the Public, that is, websites that identify customer questions and possibly even provide you with suitable answers. You could also use ChatGPT, that is, artificial intelligence. Simply ask the straightforward question, where do customers have the most frequent problems in the area of cable management? Which features are most frequently requested that the fewest products offer? And that's exactly where you'll find an excellent strategy and opportunity to satisfy your customers. Furthermore, another highly effective approach is to go on TikTok or Pinterest, for example, and observe exactly what kinds of things customers build themselves to solve their problems. Because let's be honest, customers only build something themselves if they can't buy the solution ready-made somewhere. And if that gets a lot of attention, lots of likes, lots of comments, lots of feedback, then you know you're on the right track. But here's a little tip. Limit the amount of time you spend researching such products. That means you give yourself 2 or 3 weeks to find a product like this. Don't turn this into an open-ended event, because I know a lot of sellers, well, they're not really sellers anymore because they never get started. They never take action because they're always finding something wrong with every product. So try to set a limit. Say to yourself, okay, in 3 weeks I'll have my product to start with. The best product I could find in those 3 weeks. And believe me, with 20 years of e-commerce experience, there is no perfect product. There might be a product that's almost perfect, but you'll always find something wrong with it. You'll always find a flaw. Ignore it. Start with what you found in 2 weeks. But you need to use your brain. And again, a product that truly solves real problems that customers actually really want, that doesn't get returned. So, those are usually the products that are considered to be relatively unsexy. For example, All right, once you have your product ready, we then move on to level 2 or chapter 2, which is product validation. Because a product with no demand is more of a hobby than a real business. So now we need a reality check. Naturally, you go back to Amazon and take a closer look at the exact number of orders this item has actually had over the past few months. Is there a growing search demand for the main keyword, or maybe a declining search demand? Especially search queries, unless they're driven by seasonality, are always a bit tricky. Then you can reasonably conclude that the product's entire life cycle has already come to an end. And in that specific case, you shouldn't necessarily delve deeper into this topic. Instead, look for something that you think has more potential for the future. Products should always be able to answer 3 questions. The product exists now and there is a market for it. The product already existed a full decade ago and it will probably continue to be around in another 10 years. Then you have an item with an extended and durable lifespan. For example, consider cable management. Of course, we have cable management now. It more or less existed 10 years ago as well. At least there was a need for it back then. And it will still exist in 10 years because at the very least, we'll always have something to connect with cables on our desk, even if it's just our mouse, well, maybe not the mouse so much, but for example, the power supply for our laptop. You can find out about the increasing demand for free using Google Trends. You'll find the link in the video description or through Helium 10, for example, or other tools like Analyze. Those aren't free anymore. They have transitioned into being paid tools. But that's your homework. That's basically what you need to know so you can even make a well-informed and valid decision for or against a product. For example, if you have an item whose primary main keyword search area generates fewer than 500 searches per month on Amazon in the marketplace, sorry, stay away from that. That's just a hobby. Look for items that generate over 1,000 or possibly even 2,000. That's where you're in a really hot area. For example, cable management definitely has more than 1,000 searches per month. Various other niche products like butterfly training knives will likely have significantly less than 500 searches in any given month. And that's why, of course, the competition is also low. But there are also no sales. What good does it do you if you bring a product to market where you're the best seller, but nobody buys your stuff? Mathematically, it doesn't make any sense because we're all here to make money. You, me, your neighbor, and your competitor as well. And then, of course, comes the crucial question at the end of the day, so we can wrap up chapter 2. Where exactly do you want to position yourself? In the low-cost segment, so you have to fight with some Asians every day. In the mid-range, which no one is really looking for, or truly in the high-end segment? Best quality, best design, best functionality. You have few customers there, but the customers you do have, they pay good money for it. They have money. Additionally, customers who have more money are also the ones who tend to voice the fewest complaints regarding your products. That means, if I were to start over, basically step into your shoes, I would always choose to go into the premium high-end segment. No cheap stuff. No Asian competitors, not invisible in the middle class, but right where the real money is. In the area of high class and best quality at the highest price, of course. Let's move on to level 3 because you've identified your product and you know from the strategy where you want to go. Now the question is, what do you want? Do you just want to get rid of products you ordered from Alibaba, or do you want to build your own brand? Do you want something sustainable? Because that's what it's all about. Which strategy you should pursue also depends significantly on how much budget you have. If you have a very limited budget, then you will first need to fill up your war chest. That means starting out as a product seller. You should try to sell these items as quickly as you possibly can. At this stage, it's not really about your brand. And then later on, once you have finally made enough money from your current sales, you can really start to push your brand forward even more than before. Of course, it can be the same brand. You just have to make sure, and this is a very important point, that you don't tarnish your brand's reputation by offering cheap products. So products sold at a high price, but actually of cheap quality, just to maximize your profit. That's very short-sighted because you can burn your brand name very quickly that way. And what do you have to do if your brand name is burned? It's not the end of the world. You just start with a new brand. That's what quite a lot of people do. So if there are quality issues, for example, and if you've basically burned certain products or even your entire brand name, then just discontinue it. And register a new brand name for €290 and start from scratch. And that's the point. You start from zero, which means all your previous marketing efforts that you paid for are basically wasted, and you have to do everything all over again from the beginning, so you're losing time unnecessarily. That's why you should always pay attention to good quality and make sure that your products always comply with all regulations. That way you won't end up with a sales ban in Europe at some point, but can really continue selling steadily, properly, and cleanly. Because these are sustainable businesses. And above all, also important for level 3, you always have to make sure your cash flow is right. Because if at some point you don't have enough money to reorder new items, then you got a problem. Eventually, you will run out of stock on the marketplaces, and they really don't like that. Because you will be immediately downgraded in the rankings, specifically in the organic search rankings. And as a result, you'll lose a whole lot of sales. To be able to properly handle level 3, you also need to know who your customers actually are. So you really need a detailed buyer persona. In my case, for example, it would be premium high-end users. Really, it is that last 20% who are also willing to invest more on cable management. You need to define these segments very precisely. That means you need to make a plan. Where do my customers live? What gender are my customers? What is their situation? What is their main problem? The gamer. For example, consider the young man sitting in his childhood bedroom who just wants a bit of basic order on his desk. He doesn't care nearly as much about proper cable management or well-designed cables as the busy CEO. This executive has important clients visiting the office very often and simply wants to come across as a bit more professional while working at his desk. Consequently, he will certainly allow himself much more financial freedom to invest in your high-end cable management solutions. He has the means to purchase it, so take the time to clearly define your specific buyer persona. That's your homework for level 3. And if you have addressed your buyer persona correctly and they are convinced of your quality, then of course you have the opportunity to further dominate the category. For example, expanding from cable management to mouse pads or other related items in that direction, so that the customer understands, okay, my cable management is of excellent quality and the mouse pad will certainly have similar quality. And that's why I buy it directly without really looking at the reviews. And above all, without necessarily questioning the price. Now let's move on to level 4. And for most people, this is possibly the most thankless task. Because up until now, we've only talked about product strategy. Now it's about the product itself. So, how exactly do I turn my idea into a tangible reality? And there's no way around it. You have to reach out and communicate with manufacturers for the very first time. Often these are products from China. And for some people, this is very tricky because it's not just about buying like you do on Amazon. Here, you have to start negotiating. You have to define products, write briefings, and ensure quality. And above all, of course, compliance as well. If that's too difficult for you, we're happy to help you at Asiapro and take on exactly this task for you. Specifically, in the way you shape the customer language in your definition. That is, how your buyer persona expects products from you. So if you want to sell high-end products to your customers, at Asiapro, we make sure of that for you. Of course, we ensure that these high-end products are also manufactured in China, and not by just any run-of-the-mill factory. You understand the system? That's our job. That's exactly what we've been doing for over 10 years now. Finding the right products, sourcing reliable manufacturers, ensuring quality, and ensuring full compliance, so that you can be confident you'll be able to sell the item properly and with a good profit in Europe. But if you want to do it yourself, here are the most critical points you absolutely must not skip. Sometimes Alibaba presents itself a bit like a fairground of illusions. This is because quite often it's not actually the factories themselves offering their products on Alibaba, but instead sometimes trading agencies. That means agencies that have manufacturers but are not manufacturers themselves. The unpleasant effect of this is that these trading agencies, of course, also want to make money. This means that prices are generally a bit higher. Sometimes you can also accept it because this trading agency takes care of a lot of things with the factory for you. But sometimes you end up being unbeatably expensive. And in that case, you have no chance of selling the product with a good profit. That's where you need to show a bit of finesse. When you negotiate the price with your manufacturer, be extremely careful, because you are never just negotiating about the price alone. You're also negotiating about quality, delivery time, and safety for your customer. That means at some point the manufacturer won't be able to lower the price any further without compromising on quality, or possibly buying raw materials from suppliers that haven't really been tested. And that's not what you want. We're talking about high-end products here. Luxury high-end products doesn't mean you can still buy them cheaply in China. High-end products mean that you also have to allocate a significantly larger budget on production. That means you invest heavily in higher material costs. You invest in more professional manufacturing, you need to be aware of that. So, a product that sells for a high price is not bought cheaply. You will have more satisfied customers. You will have customers who are grateful that you produce such good quality, unlike your competitors. However, you won't necessarily be able to increase your profit by 500%. When sourcing products on Alibaba, you should be aware that you should have at least 5 reliable manufacturers on your shortlist. Don't start with 100 or 200 as some people might recommend, because that will mean an endless amount of tedious work for you. Because realistically, how can you possibly compare 200 different offers with each other? That will be very difficult. You don't know if they're all offering the same thing. Also, when submitting offers, Asian investors are remarkably creative and tend to interpret various aspects differently than their competitors. And that's why the prices are often not comparable. A pro tip from me is that you don't necessarily have to start sourcing directly on Alibaba, but instead you can go through Xeo. You'll also find the link here in the video description. And furthermore, keep in mind that Xeo is your AI-powered sourcing assistant, which is also proudly provided by Alibaba. And here you can formulate your requirements, just like with ChatGPT. And Xeo, through its connection to Alibaba's database, will find the right manufacturers for you. It will ask you the right questions. If it says, okay, the request you're making right now is nice, but very unspecific. Please specify, for example, the material, the size, the weight, and only when I have all of this specific information can I provide you with a reliable list of suppliers who can actually manufacture this product for you. And with Xeo, you can also compare the offers directly. At the push of a button, you can find out which manufacturer offered different parameters than the competitor, and maybe this way you'll also find out whether the price difference is justified or not. And maybe you'll also come up with ideas on how to manufacture the product more cheaply while maintaining the same quality. You can extract all this information excellently using Xeo. If you have 3 manufacturers on your shortlist, then you absolutely need to get a sample first. That means you need to have a sample sent to you. There are 2 types of samples. Stock samples are samples that the manufacturer already has in stock, or a customized sample where they might print a logo on it, or they might already integrate certain things you've specified in your briefing. Especially with textile bags, for example, it's of course possible to create a prototype. You then carefully examine this initial prototype and may have several modifications or requests that need to be considered. If you and the manufacturer reach a formal agreement that the item can be produced as specified, then you will need to make an initial down payment. And you don't pay 100%, not even 50%. You pay 30% of the order as a deposit. As soon as you've made the down payment, there will be a pre-production or golden sample. That means this is basically the product you originally briefed, produced once as a prototype, exactly as it will be in full mass production later on. You need 3 of these. 1 goes to you and you check it. 1 goes to your agency if you have one, and 1 stays with the supplier. You have to approve this pre-production sample, and then the manufacturer can then proceed to begin the full mass production process. After mass production is complete, it is absolutely essential to conduct a thorough quality control check. The quality inspector is required to receive this specific pre-production sample, so that they can check whether the pre-production sample is identical to the mass production. Are the dimensions correct? Is the color correct? Is the weight correct, for example? Only in this way is the inspector truly able to validate 100% whether the production was carried out correctly. And during this entire production phase, actually even before the production phase, you have to make sure that all compliance requirements are met. For the European Union, this means a REACH test, that is a test for substances of concern. If you have electronic devices, you need certifications like CE and RoHS, or if you have any product that comes into contact with food, of course, you must conduct tests for food safety standards. This is not optional, it is mandatory for legal compliance. Because sometimes, especially from Amazon, you will very often be asked whether you really have all the tests. If you fail to comply with these regulations, it can happen that Amazon refuses to grant approval for your item for sale or simply blocks it. Or of course, if your item really contains concerning or hazardous substances, it can be blocked by your competitors, and you may also receive a very hefty and substantial fine. Finally, when production is finished, quality control inspections have been successfully passed, and all necessary compliance requirements are met. Then it's about shipping the goods to the European Union. And please do yourself a favor. This is a very important appeal from me. Do not ship your goods DDP, that is delivered duty paid. to the European Union, because that basically means the manufacturer in China is paying your customs duties. And you really don't want that because you don't know what they're actually paying. In most cases, at the end of the day, this actually constitutes the criminal offense of smuggling. And that's because you are the one smuggling, since you are the importer. The overseas client and the manufacturer will always claim that you had the goods cleared through customs because they basically want to keep that extra profit for themselves. A DDP shipment is often significantly more cost-effective upfront. But at the end of the day, you'll lose at your next customs audit and end up paying substantial additional penalties. That means you should only import goods into the European Union properly, where you declare and pay your own customs duties. Of course, you don't do this yourself. You don't go to customs and pay in cash. Instead, you have your freight forwarder who takes care of it for you. But you receive the customs documents, and that's important. The customs documents must be with you. They need to be found in your records so that if there is a customs audit, you can prove, yes, I have properly declared and paid everything, dear people. And for the correct amount too. Yes, often it happens that you order goods worth 200,000 euros. But the supplier in Asia only declares a goods value of 50,000 euros and presents it in a way that makes you think you're saving a lot of money. Yes, specifically on your customs duties and import VAT. To this day, he hasn't realized that we actually get the import VAT back. It's treated the same as input tax. And customs duties are often somewhere between 3 and 7%. At the end of the day, he only does this to save money for himself, because he also has to pay export duties. And of course, if the value of the goods was declared lower, then the export duties aren't as high anymore. So he's not doing you a favor, actually he's doing himself a favor. All right, level 3 is the official launch and strategic pricing of your product. You've definitely done a great price calculation, and now you want to launch your product on Amazon and offer it at a special price at first. That's very commendable, but it's not effective. Because if you start selling your products at a special price, that automatically means you're slipping into the bargain category. Please don't do that. Continue to sell your products at the regular price, but try to develop your marketing strategies as broadly as possible. The first 30 days count, especially on Amazon. On Amazon, there's also the honeymoon phase. That means Amazon will rank you higher than you actually deserve at the moment. Rankings on Amazon work relatively simply. It's really just about sales numbers, returns, that's it. So if you sell little, you'll also be ranked poorly on Amazon. No matter how good your SEO is, meaning your search engine optimization for the new algorithm. That means you have to do everything you can to make sure your product is purchased as often as possible through Amazon's platform. But not in an incentive-based way, not by going to your friends and acquaintances or to any third-party agencies and asking them to buy your product on Amazon. And then you reimburse the whole thing via PayPal. That massively violates Amazon's terms of service. This means, in case of doubt, your account will be immediately suspended. And a suspended Amazon account is lost forever. And not only that, you can't even open a new one. This essentially means that your career on Amazon is over. So please, make sure to always follow the guidelines, especially on Amazon. But you have so many ways to do marketing. Of course, first of all, good product listings and good product images. Images are by far the most important thing anyway. Bad images mean bad sales. It's a very simple mathematical solution. But you don't necessarily have to do everything through Amazon. You can run PPC, you can do SEO, you can position your images well. That's the basics. Those are really the basic fundamentals. What you won't be able to avoid in 2025 is doing promotions outside of Amazon. That means you try to find influencers on TikTok, on Instagram, you try to tap into other marketplaces. Even if everyone says eBay is dead, no, it's still by far the number 2 among the following marketplaces. What always pays off, especially when starting out, is creating bundles. If you have cable management, for example, 3 clips, then you make it 2 times 3 clips and offer that at a discounted price because you only have to pay the shipping costs once. That means for you that the customer gets a lower purchase price per item, but you have a higher product value or shopping cart value. And that way you can earn even more money. You have more revenue. You can then use this revenue more quickly to place a reorder in China. You produce more, you get more. Better prices, without having to lower your prices on Amazon, of course. That means, of course, if you paid attention, your profit increases. These are the little things you absolutely have to do. And they're not small. They're actually essential, really important things. Especially social media will be indispensable in 2025. Social media, that's a good keyword. You shouldn't just sell on Amazon. You shouldn't just sell on eBay. Also use your own online shop. You should definitely also keep an eye on TikTok Shop. Keep an eye on it. At the moment now in mid-2025, not yet. It's not the biggest sales channel under the sun yet, but it could become one. We actually experienced the exact same situation in the US. It started off very slowly, quite disappointingly in fact. And then it suddenly took off on Black Friday. And now TikTok is really a very, very important sales channel for most US sellers. So once your product is finished, stored in China and already stocked in Germany, your only remaining task is to get it to as many people as possible at the highest possible price. You have to balance that out. That's your job. See where you can position yourself with your price, where people are still buying and where customers stop. Stop buying if it's even about the price at all. I mean, if we're operating in the high-end segment, then price isn't necessarily that important. Customers don't care at all whether you buy the item for 24.99 euros or for 29.99 euros. As long as they're sure, their problem will be solved. With the item, it doesn't matter. It makes no difference, especially for people who have more money to spend. And what's really important to remember as an extra tip, always make sure you have enough stock on hand at all times. Every single out-of-stock period, even the briefest one, sets you back by months. Always make sure you remain able to deliver consistently across all your different channels, whether it's TikTok, eBay, or even Amazon, or your own online shop. One out-of-stock period costs you not just sales and therefore money, but also rankings in the organic search results, whether it's eBay or Amazon. And in that case, you basically have to start from scratch again. So to sum up, private label is not about just slapping your logo on and cashing in, but it's truly a serious discipline that, if you approach it smartly, is sustainable and highly profitable. The process just needs to be set up properly. That saves you nerves, time, and money, and it even prevents your financial ruin. You can handle the whole thing yourself with the strategies I've shared with you in this video. And with 100 open Chrome tabs, you'll definitely be able to get the whole thing done. It might take some time, but at the end of the day, you'll be successful. I'm pretty sure about that. But you can also work together with Asiapro. We help many clients take over exactly these processes, at least in part. In the vast majority of cases, we don't take care of everything. In most cases, and this is where we're really good, is the sourcing part. That means if you're looking for a manufacturer in China who needs to deliver a certain level of quality, as I already mentioned, that's exactly our specialty. We're really good at that. But also when it comes to your product strategies and product development, especially for level 1 and level 2, we are your dedicated partner there as well. We help you get exactly that back on the right track. If you now realize that you absolutely need to work with us, just like hundreds of other successful clients before you, then please use the link here in the video description to access our calendar. And in that initial conversation, we will find out together if and how we can help you. Otherwise, I have 2 more things that are super important. First, subscribe to the channel if private label production in China and e-commerce are important to you. And second, and this is even more important, take action. Step by step. Don't wait. Don't try to find the perfect product. That doesn't exist. Become successful. End your life with the help of e-commerce. And we'll see you in the next video. Goodbye.